y'all, this is Marley K. Hope y'all are well. Today, I would like to talk to you about an interesting piece. It was an opinion piece from the Manila Times that I found on Microsoft Start. And it's interesting because someone from the Philippines wrote about, the de-dollarization that we are experiencing globally and how folks are getting back to biblical principles and just measures. And I just found it interesting because one, this nation is built on and operates in pretty much everything now that's, anti-biblical principle from chattel slavery, which was forbidden in accordance to the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments, to things like how debt is discharged, how long, we're supposed to be held to debt and when debt is forgiven, just how we're supposed to treat each other. You talk about racism, killing, thou shalt not kill. Like everything about America is anti-Christian, anti the Bible. And yet people will say this is a Christian country. And nothing could be further from the truth. But if folks want to keep saying it, I guess they'll say it until till it comes true. But that ain't going to make it so. So anyway, let's get into this article. And the article was written by Jeremiah Belgica. And he's an attorney. And again, this was one of two in the Manila Times. The world has been gripped by the news of BRICS, the grouping of some of the world's leading emerging market economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And excuse me in advance if y'all hear some beeping because I'm sitting next to my alarm camera in the backyard. So anytime a bird or anything goes by, it just goes off. It did not receive the media attention that approximates the importance of this event, but as days and weeks progress, the earth-shifting implication of this is slowly being unraveled. There has been what is called a dollar dominance since July 1944, when the Bretton Woods Agreement was negotiated. At that time, the nations of the world agreed to use the U.S. dollar as the international currency, backed by gold after World War II. 1 ounce of gold was valuated for $35. Countries that had lost their gold reserves could now print their national currencies based on the amount of U.S. dollars that they had as reserves. This was accepted by the League of Nations, which, if you understand anything about the global order, you'll understand the League of Nations. And I just recommend you do some research on it. Who founded it? Why did it come to be? Who were the open and behind the scenes members, etc., etc. Since the US dollar was considered stable, being the only currency or representative money backed up by gold. In theory and in practice, the US dollar was only issued in representation of the real money, which is gold. In other words, it was a certificate that there existed a real asset of value that backed it up. By basing their currencies on the US dollar, other countries could also rely on stability of the value of their currencies. Another reason for the dominance of the US dollar was due to its status as the official trade denomination or currency for oil purchases in the Middle East, particularly in Saudi Arabia. This gave way to the term petrodollar, which refers to the US dollar. The status of the petrodollar is now being threatened as other oil-rich countries like Iran have completely refused to trade in the US dollar. And I've been telling y'all about that for the last couple of weeks or months that this was coming. In 1971, Then U.S. President Richard Nixon removed gold as the basis of the dollar to prevent a bank run. Sounds familiar? This was among a set of economic policies that became known in history as the Nixon shock. The Federal Reserve of the U.S. was found to have been printing U.S. currency more than the actual dollars in reserve. France started to demand from the U.S. that they be given the gold and was returning their reserved U.S. dollars. And so I find it interesting that just a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, France went and snitched, trying to cozy up to China and I guess throwing America under the bus. So this relationship they have is interesting because they both do the same thing to each other. Other countries started to follow the lead of France. Then President Nixon declared that the U.S. would no longer be exchanging dollars for gold, since the U.S. dollar would no longer be based on gold. This was the start of the fiat currency. Fiat means government authority. This means that a currency like that of the U.S. and the Philippine peso has a presumptive value simply because the government says so. The currency itself is without value, and it does not stand in place as a representative of anything of value like gold or silver. The government says it, so it must be valuable. But the fiat is not a thing because history tells us of hundreds, if not thousands of communities and civilizations that, thousands of civilizations that attempted to use this fiat currency in their monetary systems. Unfortunately, history would also show that all monetary systems that adopted the fiat currency eventually failed. Like a man waking up from a nightmare or a dream, these people suddenly awoke to the fact that they had been exchanging their time, services, and goods for a worthless currency without intrinsic value. Intrinsic value. So, that's the same for us. We work, we get into debt, we take out student loans, we take out home loans for 30 years when biblically we're only supposed to be in debt for 7 years. After 7 years, the debt should be forgiven. But America found ways to continue to keep us into debt so that we continue to have to work and they just draw out everything and we're just debt slaves basically. And our enslavement is never going to end. The other thing is everybody that has a birth certificate or a social security number, you are a slave to the system. So that's how they use, they use those numbers to leverage for resources from other countries. They basically sell us like they did on the auction block during slavery. It's just a new form of chattel slavery, except for they don't beat us. We willfully go along with the system. Money and currency are different. A key to understanding and differentiating between them is to first understand that money and currency are not your real wealth. According to economist and author Michael Maloney, your true wealth is our time and freedom. It is a trading tool that stores the economic energy that is your time and freedom, whereas currencies leak them. So one of the things that, people don't really understand is that this system keeps us working all the time. So we are away from what we need to do. And so they sold us the lie that debt is good. Debt is what we need to be in. And not saying that, we don't have to be in debt. But a lot of time buy things that we don't need with money that we don't have. And the amount of time that it's going to take us to repay the debt is not biblical. It is worldly. Both money and currency have a lot more similar traits and characteristics than dissimilarities. Both are a medium of exchange. They have a unit of account. They're portable, durable, divisible, and they are fungible, which means they're interchangeable. The only real difference is that only real money can store value for a long period of time. A gold coin in Egypt 5,000 years ago is still valuable today, but a paper currency 200 years ago by a dead system has no more value than an old archaic paper. The cause of inflation is the printing of currency. Because of the law of supply and demand, the more currency in circulation, the lesser the value of the currency. That's what we're experiencing now. All the stimulus, all the extra unemployment, all the extra food stamps, the PPP loans that you don't have to pay back. It's extra money in the system. The lesser the value of the currency, the higher the prices. In this light, it actually shows us that the rise in prices is not due to the rising value of goods or services, but due to the devaluation of currency because of its oversupply. Thus, the bailout and quantitative easing implemented during the global economic crash of 2009 actually contributed to the long-term devaluation of currencies around the world, especially the dollar. Experts say that the tremendous increase in printing of currencies out of thin air into the global markets are now are now causing the rise in prices of goods and services around the world. Richard Duncan, former consultant to the International Monetary Fund, which is the IMF, and the World Bank, and author of The Dollar Crisis, said, during the second round of quantitative easing, global food prices went up 60%, and this humanitarian disaster for the 2 billion people on Earth who live on less than $2 per day. These people were hungry to start with. They became hungrier, and some of them started overthrowing their governments in North Africa and around the Middle East. Pay attention, because when things get bad here, that's what folks gonna do to you. So quantitative easing is the spark that ignited the Arab Spring. He further explained that when you create money, you get some sort of inflation. It depends on where the inflation goes. Putting aside some of the geopolitical considerations, could the unhampered increase in the supply of the US dollar be one of the main reasons why BRICS countries and other similar economies are now moving away from the US dollar? It appears that many experts in the past decades have already been signaling the warning on a possible global de-dollarization due to unhampered printing and oversupply of the U.S. currency. One person who sounded the alarm more than 10 years ago is American political lecturer and author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, G. Edward Griffin, who scathingly said, if they keep expanding the money supply so vastly, why aren't our prices growing faster than they really are? And the answer is that a good chunk of the money that the Fed created has been shipped overseas. Well, now I understand that you export your inflation by simply sending all these dollars that you created to other countries, and they send you their refrigerators and their cars and whatever, their TV sets. So get hardware and they get little pieces of paper. It's a great deal for the American people for a while. Sooner or later, all those pigeons come home to roost. When the time comes, as it looks like it's coming, when the rest of the world is saying, we don't want to play this game anymore. Uncle Sam's dollars are just becoming worthless. There are too many of them. We've got to find something else other than American dollars. Then those dollars start to come back to America. He also said, once this revs up and we've got this little trickle of money coming back that we previously exported, once it becomes a flood and it starts to rush back, now we are getting our former exported inflation brought back to us. And then we'll see the quantity of money inside of the United States grow much more rapidly than the Federal Reserve can create it, because we're getting our previous money back. This is when we will really see the tanking of the US dollar in terms of what it will buy. And this is why I'm encouraging people, if you have savings, if you have money, if you have retirement plans, whatever. I know people say, oh, you shouldn't mess with your money. If you don't mess with your money, they're going to take your money. If you don't mess with your money is going to be worthless. If you don't buy things that are tangible that you can use when the economy collapses, when there's no food in the store, when there's no power, when there's no internet, when you don't have a job, things you're just going to be in bad condition. So try to do as much as you can now. Unfortunately, the US dollar is not the only currency that will be affected by this hyperinflation, but also countries like the Philippines that have based their national currencies on the US dollar. So, is there an alternative solution for this seemingly impending global tragedy? The biblical principle advocating against unjust weights and measures and the determination of real wealth in gold and silver seems to have found its way to many secular and practical economic experts who have been looking for a solution to this global economic situation. And so I just found this article interesting because no matter what they do, they got to go back to the good book. The way that the Most High taught us to live is the way that we should live, the way that we should treat each other, the way that we should do business, the way that we should buy, sell, and trade, the way that we should work. We don't do nothing that the Bible tells us to do. And therefore, America is about to be judged. So, with that said, continue to prep, continue to pray, continue to repent and seek the Most High. Ask for our people to be awakened so that we can cry out and ask for, deliverance from what's coming, because what's coming is coming. This nation has spilled a lot of blood, ran a lot of Ponzi schemes, taken a lot of time and money away from people who didn't know any better. And the people that are responsible and the nation in general has to pay a price for that. So y'all just continue to do what you're doing to prepare and, pray. That's all we can do because we have nooses around our necks and nowhere to go except for up. Look up because your redemption is near. All right, this is Marley K. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with other people who are asleep and try to get them to wake up because the rest of the world is waking up. And when they give us our money back, it is a wrap. All right, this is Marley K, and I'm out.